I'm going to run for president. I'm going to run for your children and mine. Let's give them the future they deserve.
Francis Suarez says he's ready for a new job. He's seeking the 2024 GOP nomination, but it's a big hill to climb with former President Donald Trump leading the pack. Now let's bring in exclusively to Newsmax, man of the hour, Miami Mayor Francis Suarez. Welcome, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for joining us and giving us the Newsmax exclusive. Sir, let's jump right into this. President Suarez, what is the biggest existential threat to the United States? If you were to become president, what would you be concerned with most right away?
The biggest existential threat is easy. That's China. And that's a competitive threat. That is a military threat in terms of putting a military base 90 miles away in Cuba. That is a threat that is penetrating our borders with fentanyl to the tune of killing 80 to 90,000 Americans on an annual basis. That is the equivalency of a 747 crashing every single day. That is not even a difficult answer. And by the way, we're giving them $1 trillion of our wealth on an annual basis in the form of a trade deficit and the IP that they steal every single year. So we're actually giving them the $1 trillion for them to compete against us, to subvert us in our own hemisphere in South America and push socialism upon South America, which of course creates more poverty and more immigration pressure. So that's an easy answer.
Mr. Mayor, we saw Donald Trump after the arraignment in Miami. We saw him leave, and he stopped off at Versailles. Very, very popular. I've been there 100 times. A very popular Cuban bakery in Miami, Little Havana, I guess they would call it. Sir, Cuba policy. What's the right U.S.-Cuba policy right now? I think Cubans can come here, but Americans aren't allowed to freely go to Cuba. What's the right policy?
Well, I can tell you what the wrong policy is, which is the Joe Biden policy, which is the Obama policy, which is to give away everything to Cuba for no concessions, which is to do nothing after the July 11th spontaneous protests, which converted Cuba from what was an ideological threat to now a national security threat. That is definitely not the right strategy. I think we have the most powerful military on the planet. We have the smartest people on the planet, and we have to come up with a strategy not just for Cuba, but for this entire hemisphere. And I think the key to it is what I just discussed in the last answer, which is taking the money that we're sending to China, bringing it back into our hemisphere, bringing it first home, and fulfilling the jobs in our supply chain that's vulnerable that we're giving to China, in the United States, and with the remaining funds and the remaining resources, use them to create prosperity in our hemisphere and strengthen ourselves like China has been doing against us with our own money.
The Russia-Ukraine war that's going on right there. Where do you stand on Russia policy, on Ukraine policy? Where do you stand? Which one of those do you side with?
Well, the United States has an $800 billion military spending budget. Russia has an $80 billion military spending budget. So the consequence of Biden's policy and posture of weakness has invited aggression, not just from Putin, invading Ukraine, but also from China, which is now talking about putting a base 90 miles away from the United States. So that posture is certainly the wrong answer. I would certainly not have a posture of weakness, and we should have never been in that situation in Ukraine in the first place had we not had a posture of weakness. We've spent about $100 billion in Ukraine, which is more than the entire military spending budget of Russia. And I think there has to be a sense from the American people that there is accountability. What I don't want to see happen, unfortunately, now that that this situation has devolved, is what I don't want to see happen is American men and women, on the ground anywhere and risking American lives. So this is unfortunately a conflict that we have to win because we don't know how far Putin is going to go, whether he will invade other NATO countries or try to do something even more aggressive. The problem here is Joe Biden. Joe Biden has created a perception of weakness that has invited aggression by our enemies, and it's costing us money, and hopefully it won't cost us lives.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, one of the other things I've done to every candidate, by the way, Ron DeSantis came on this show first, right after he announced, Vivek Ramaswamy did as well, Nikki Haley came on as well, and I've asked them all the same question. Are you establishment or not establishment? When I say establishment, the old Rhino class of Republican in name only, and less, more conservative or more establishment, would you say?
I'm definitely not a Washington Republican. I'm definitely an outside the box Republican, and I work for a local government, so I'm the closest to the people Republican. And my Republican principles are simple. I've kept taxes low. I've actually lowered taxes. I'm probably the only person running for office that I'm aware of that has actually lowered taxes to its lowest level, which has spurred a double-digit economic growth. I actually keep people safe. I'm the only mayor in the race, so I'm the only one that has a police force that actually has to keep people safe. We have the lowest homicide rate per capita since 1964, and this year we're 40% below that number. And my innovation and prosperity agenda has created the lowest unemployment in America and the highest wage growth in America. So we have created the most prosperity of any candidate who's running for office.
Mr. Mayor, really good having you on. Appreciate you coming to The Balance first, and good luck. Good luck. We will watch you, and there's 12 people in the race now, so it's quite a crowded field. But you distinguish yourself as Hispanic, conservative, and a mayor of a very large U.S. city. That is unique, sir. Thank you for joining us.
You got it, Eric. Thank you so much.